Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's live stream. I'm Julia. I work for the Study in Sweden team at the Swedish Institute. And you guys are here because we're going to talk, or we're going to give you an inside view on academic life in Sweden. We have invited a bunch of current international students. It's Brooke, it's Jed, and it's Nozinhle. And we're going to discuss and talk about higher education and academic life the Swedish way. So let's get to it. Let's bring in our guests for the day. Hi.
Hello.
Jed,
Hello.
Brooke, and Nozinhle. Welcome, guys. How you doing?
Hi. Good.
How are you?
Good. So let's start off by, or you can just introduce yourselves. What's your name, or not your names, but where you're from, what you study, where do you live in Sweden, and yeah. Brooke, would you like to go first?
Sure. So my name is Brooke. I am from the United States. I am studying a Master's of Ethnicity and Migration Studies at Linköping University, but I live in Norrköping, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here as well.
Thank you.
Jed?
Hi, everyone. It's good to be back on the live stream. We had so much time the last time, so I hope you guys are also going to enjoy this one. So I'm Jed. I'm from the Philippines, and I'm currently taking my Master's in Leadership for Sustainability at Malmö University, and I live here in Malmö, southern part of Sweden.
Yeah. And Nozinhle?
Hi,
You're also a
everyone.
live stream pro now.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nozinhle, and I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm currently studying at the University West, where I'm doing a master's in automation and robotics, and I stay in the same city, which is Trollhättan.
Cool. So once again, I'm happy to have you here, and I'm sure the audience is as well. So let's start off by talking just a little bit about the basics, or like an introduction to higher education in Sweden. Do you know, can you find, like, when you search for a program, or when you wanted to study in Sweden, did you find a lot of degree programs in English in Sweden? Nozinhle?
In my
You
case,
did?
I did. I went through the websites trying to university admissions. That's where I started because it at least has all the programs that are available for a certain study period. And when I looked through it, I had a lot of options. Even specifically within my field, I had a lot of options, and I had started off with a very long list. I had to narrow it down until I finally got to the final four. So I had a lot of options. So I can certainly say there are a lot of English taught masters, and I think a bit of bachelors as well. But yeah, there are a lot of English taught programs that a person can apply to.
Yeah. Brooke, do you know how many bachelor's and master's programs in Sweden that are taught entirely in English? Do you know how many?
You're putting me on the spot, but I'm going to take a wild guess.
I know.
I'm going to guess 50?
50? Jed, do you have a guessing as well?
There are over 1,000 English taught programs.
It is. So it's a lot.
And the thing is,
It's a lot more than 50.
before we go on, though, I have to say the only reason why I knew that is because I created this video about the application process and how to apply to study in Sweden. So if you haven't seen it on the YouTube channel, go check it out. And that was written on the script. There are over 1,000 English taught programs, so that's the only reason why I know it. So don't think that I'm actually an expert on this. So
yeah, and that's great news, Brooke, is for you as well.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. And all of our programs are listed in our program database at studyinSweden.se. This is a website, or a website page we will address many times during this live stream, because it's a go-to for any information about studying in Sweden. Okay, Jed, the next question is for you. Can you study both masters, bachelors, and PhDs in Sweden?
Mm-hmm. Yes, although I don't think you can study them all at the same time, but they're available bachelor's, master's, and lots of different pro and PhDs also in different areas in Sweden. So, and again, over 1,000 of them are in English. So if you're thinking of studying here, it's definitely language is definitely not going to be a barrier.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also, speaking of PhD, I would like to address initially at the start of this live stream by telling you in the audience that a PhD, or it's viewed as a job in Sweden. So you get hired by the university and you receive a monthly salary as well. And this means that there is no tuition fee and no need for scholarships either, as you get paid. But the thing is, there are no like centralized application process. You can find the job listed on each university's website or job board, or how to say it. And if you're interested in doing a PhD in Sweden, you can always, as I said before, visit our website, studyinsweden.se, for more information about a PhD specifically as well. And but now something wrong with me today. I'm just
Doing great. Doing great.
yeah. But now when we have addressed the PhD part, let's talk about a bachelor's and master's. So tell me a little bit about your studies, Nosy, if you would like to go first.
Okay, cool. So my program is in the engineering discipline, and I like the fact that most of what I do is practical oriented. So I tend to have like lectures maybe at the beginning of the semester, and then towards the end of the semester, it's mostly just working on your projects, doing lab work, which I find to be very interesting because engineering really requires that. And one of the things that I really liked about the program that I chose at my specific school is because of the resources that are there. So at least you don't have to deal with theory. You actually have a lot of practical implementation that you can do as a student, and the environment is very friendly. It's not. I think one of the things that I like about our robotics lab is it's not the kind of environment where you kind of like feel scared to do anything because you're like, oh, I'll break this or whatever. No.
Yeah.
The environment is very free. You can try what you want, and as long as you have the authority, you can ask for extra time to stay in there if you want to do some things, if you want to work on a particular thing, or if you want to understand more. So the environment is very friendly, and it gives you that feeling that you can experiment and do what you need to do for you to be able to understand the concept. So I find it really interesting, and I've enjoyed it so far. It's been great.
Yeah, cool. What about you, Brooke? Tell us a little bit about your studies as well.
Of course. So, like I said, I'm doing a master's program. It's 2 years. So I'm actually graduating in a month, which is super scary, but also very exciting. So I picked this program because it really is a very unique program. It's ethnicity and migration studies. There are very, 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 very few programs like it around the world. There's only one other one in Sweden. I believe it's in Malmö. And this program is pretty new. It's like 4 or 5 years old. So they're definitely still trying to find the footing in the program, and but I think it's been an amazing experience. Has taught me so much. We typically have so over the 2 years I've had mainly lectures in the lecture hall, and I do one course at a time, and I write a paper for that course at the end of the course, and it usually lasts around a month. And so I've done many different courses on many different subjects, preparing me for life outside of academia, or if you want to be in academia, you certainly have the training within that as well. But it has been a really awesome experience getting to try out this semi-new program, and I can't wait to see where it takes me.
Yeah. And can you also let the audience know, because you live in Norrköping,
Yes.
but the university is in Linköping. So two different.
Yeah.
And do you commute? Is it like the distance? Is it far away, or is it?
Well, luckily, my program, even though it's called Linköping University, it's on the Norrköping campus. So I live in Norrköping and go to the Norrköping campus. But for those who live in Norrköping and have their studies on the Linköping campus, which is about 40 minutes away, there's a free campus bus, which is super nice, and you just go on with your card. And it runs throughout the weekdays, not on the weekends, unfortunately, but there is also a very nice train to take that's very quick. So it's very accessible if you are thinking about living in Norrköping. It's a little bit smaller, if that's more of your vibe, and you want to live on the study on the Linköping campus. It's totally doable, and there's a lot of great resources.
Cool.
Yeah.
And studying, I know that a lot of students can find it very stressful from time to time. Jed, how's the workload in your program? Is it stressful or what do you think?
I mean, I think stress is kind of subjective. So what stresses me out may be a day in a normal day for like Brooke and Nosy. So, but I think generally it all boils down to how you balance your time. Because the good and the bad thing about studying in Sweden is that Sweden is such an amazing place. There's a lot of things to do here, especially now it's springtime. You know, you just look, you could be at the library studying and just look outside the window. It's nice and sunny, and you just want to drop your books and just run outside or just sit in the sun. So, but in terms of the workload, I think with all things, it's all about time management. Just make sure you have clear goals. If you have any deadlines, if you know you have a deadline on the weekend, then it's not a good idea to go to the club on the weekend. So it's all about time management. But yeah, I think it gets stressful at times, but it's really up to you.
Yeah. And speaking like on a day-to-day level, Nosy, how does a typical or an average day looks like for you?
Okay, so I'll say maybe an average day will probably have me having a lecture and maybe one lab section. So the lecture is basically going through the theory, and then the lab session is when you get to implement. It's either practically at the robotics lab or using software. So we use a lot of like industry standard softwares for implementing some of the projects that we do in the courses that I do. So that's like probably what an average day like. I have very, very few days where I have more than two lectures, and I think this was only at the beginning of the period because our study our study calendar is split into 2 semesters, and each semester has got 2 periods, and in each period I do 3 courses. So at the beginning, that's when maybe I may have more of lectures than theory, but it's rarely more than 3 even then. And then now, because we're towards the end of a period, I mostly have probably one theory lecture, and then most of it is either lab work or independent study. So you have to plan around your work because the assignments will just be given on Canvas, the online platform where you can access the resources. So you just have to be able to manage your time and be able to make sure that you submit the assignments on time. But mainly, it's not a lot of lecture work. It's mostly either practical work or independent study time.
Okay. And when you do that like programming, are you all in like one classroom or are you at home and do it like individually?
Well, it depends on what the student wants. Fortunately, for the courses that I'm currently doing, we have the option of joining in on Zoom or being at the school lab. So if you feel like maybe your laptop does not have like the technical requirements for it to be able to run certain softwares, you can use the school lab because it'll be available for you to use, and we also have like study rooms that have laptops that have like desktops that you can use. So depending on what you want, you can actually be there physically, or if you do not, you can just be doing it from home, and then you log in to the Zoom session, and if you have any questions, that's when you ask. Because the lab sessions, their main, it's not like you'll be just on your own. You'll still be having a lecturer or teaching assistant.
Okay.
And when you're doing your assignments, then you get someone who can be like, oh, do you have questions? And then you can get help as you're working. So you can do it from home, you can do it at school. Yeah, it's very flexible.
Okay, cool. And just to like compare your programs, Brooke, do you recognize your average day to Nosy's or is it a big difference?
I mean, there's a little bit of a difference, especially where I'm at right now. I'm writing my thesis, which is a very, very different, like I don't have any classes. I just show up to the library and study as much as I possibly can. But when I did have classes, even last semester, it's very similar. We don't have labs like Nosy does, but we have lectures like she does. And we actually, my first year here, it was online. because of the pandemic. But then the second year, they brought everything into the classroom, so everything is on campus. And like Nosie's classroom, you can also join on Zoom as well. But who knows what that will be like for prospective students coming in. You know, it changes all the time. But I definitely see like some similarities, but also some differences as well.
Yeah, and it can depend. Like everything we talk about, it can be a difference depending on where you study, at what university, and what program. But yeah, Jed, would you like to tell us a little bit about your classes, or how big are your classes, and how international are they? Do you study with other Swedes, or is it purely like international? And also, what are your classmates like? Do you have a nice vibe?
I remember we started off. We were around, I think, close to 50 students at the start of the program, and then over the course of the following months, some students just decided to not pursue the program anymore. So right now, I think we're around 35, 37, if I'm not mistaken. And in terms of how international our program is, I think we only have 2 Swedish people in our class, in a class of like 30. So a lot of my classmates are from Europe, so from Germany, Romania, Austria. I'm one of the few people from Asia, so I'm from the Philippines. I have a classmate from India, and yeah. So, and the good thing about it is that it's an international group of people. So every time we discuss about topics concerning sustainability, because our course is mainly focused on sustainability, it gives us an interesting perspective on how sustainability is perceived in different contexts. Like, what is sustainability in Europe? What is sustainability in the United States? What is sustainability in the Philippines or in India? So yeah, so I think apart from the lectures that we have, what I find really engaging, and if you're lucky enough to be in a class wherein you have all these different international students, you're really going to learn a lot from them, more than just what you're going to learn from your professors.
Yeah. And Brooke, what about you? Are you
I'm
hanging
the same
out
as
with your
Jed.
classmates?
Yeah, so I'm the same as Jed. We don't have a lot of Swedes in our class. There is mainly Swedish programs at my university, so we're one of the few international programs. There's a couple. I think I could count on one hand. And so we, the Swedes have an opportunity to study in their language, so they normally do. But we have 3, 4 Swedes, and the rest are international. And I think I really run with the international crew, like in my class. I'm very close with them. In fact, that's what makes this graduation so emotional and difficult is I have had such a bond with my classmates, and we're there for each other no matter what. Like, we study together, we hang out on the weekends together, we are over at each other's place all the time. I even went to go travel with my friend recently from my class. So I will miss them so much. And I think, it might not be the way for everyone, but there is something really special about, bonding with your classmates, and you can understand each other, and you have kind of like built-in friends a little bit. So I really like my classmates. They're great.
Yeah, it sounds like you met friends for life.
Yeah, it really is. I could see each other, like us being each other's weddings, at each other's like important life events. So I am really sad to leave them, to be honest. But you got to move on at some point. So, yeah.
And you maybe have a new chapter ahead of you as well.
Yeah,
where you will find new friends for life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nosy, like speaking of higher education in Sweden, did you find the grading system to be different from your home country?
Yep, I did actually. Because in my previous studies, when I did my bachelor's, our school had like a set way of how your courses are graded, in the sense that the assignments that you do during the semester, they accounted for 25% of your final grade. And then the overall grade was then dependent on the final exam, which is usually like a 3-hour exam, one per course. But then here it's very different based on the course. So you can have, like I have 3 different courses, and you can have maybe, let's say, assignments in one course, and the total of those assignments is what determines your grade. So each assignment has a specific weight to your final grade. You can have a course where you have assignments where you just need to either pass or fail the assignments, and then you have one final project, and that project is what is going to determine your grade. And then in some cases, you have like maybe you have a course where the assignments and the project, as well as the practical implementation of the project, all come together to sort of contribute to your final grade. So it's really dependent on the course, and there's like so many ways in which the final grade can be calculated. But then the good thing is at the beginning of each course, they give you a very clear course PM on what you can expect, how you're going to be graded, and what you need to do to attain a certain grade, attain a certain grade. And it's usually very simple with us, because maybe because of the project, in the courses that I have projects, because you're like, okay, you have these deliverables. If you meet this deliverable, you have a grade C, this deliverable and this deliverable BA. So it's very clear on how you get your final grade. And yeah, it's really independent. It's really based on each particular course, I can say.
Yeah, and this is also again something that can differ from program to program.
Yeah.
I've heard that the most like common grading system, or how to say it, is A to F.
Yep.
But it can also be just pass or fail
or
for certain assignments.
Yeah.
What about you, Jed? What's most common in your program?
I think Nosy covered everything,
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna add much more there. But yeah, so it's just to kind of repeat it again. So it's an A to F. So A is excellent, B is very
Yeah.
good, C is because I remember I was talking to a friend of mine from the United States, and in the United States, I think if you get a D, it means you fail. But here in Sweden, you can get
Yeah.
up to an E and still pass. So it's definitely something different. And yeah, for the pass or fail courses, most of them are usually just interactive sessions. You just have
Yeah.
to basically show up and participate to do that. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's also really interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the grading system, it can be a big difference depending on where you're from as well.
Mhm.
So if you'd like to learn more about the different grading systems that you can potentially come in contact with in Sweden, we have our digital ambassadors, or everyone here is studying Sweden digital ambassadors. Awesome people. But we have another one called Anna Maria. She have written a really good and detailed blog post about this topic, which you can find at studyinsweden.se. And we also have a former digital ambassador, Dina, who also wrote a blog post on this topic as well. Like we said previously, studyinsweden.se is your go-to.
Everything is there.
Yeah, everything is there. But speaking of like surprises, was there anything about the academic culture in Sweden that surprised you, Brooke? And now I mean like more the academic culture in Sweden.
Yeah, I think it's I want to say it's even more relaxed than the US. It's I think it's more like, which is a good thing in my opinion. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's actually good that you like we were just talking about the grading system. I have never heard of anyone failing in my program, which is really great. I'd like to say it's because we're really smart. But I think it's also because there's a lot of ideas that are accepted and encouraged and stuff like that. But if that is the case, I was really shocked that you can like kind of redo your exam, which is really cool. It says it kind of lays that out in the syllabus that we get for each course, and you would get an FX, which means that you can rewrite your paper, which is really great. I really don't think that in the US that would have been even up for option for an option. So I think that was really, really cool and really surprising. And another thing, I don't know if it's kind of ties in with academic, and I have a feeling we'll talk about it a lot, is addressing your professors by their first name. It's
Yeah.
so interesting. It's so interesting. Like in the US, we always say like Dr. So and so and Dr. So, like
Yeah.
it's very strict. But I call my supervisor like, "Hey Anna, how's it going?" It feels so weird, but it's also really cool because we have an equal playing field, and I feel like we are almost like colleagues. And of course, she's much higher than me education-wise. She has a lot of power, but I feel like she's also like a peer, if that makes sense. So those are the two things that surprise me a lot.
Mm. What about you, Jed? Was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, just looking at it from the, Asian culture perspective, hierarchy in Asian culture tend to be more vertical, as here in Sweden it's more horizontal. So, and I think what Brooke said about calling professors by their first names, I thought that was really weird. It took
Yeah.
a while for me to get to it, because in the Philippines, if you um, call your professor, your boss, your superior by their first name, it's a sign of disrespect. Like, you wouldn't
Right.
even think of doing that, and if you do that, they're
Yeah.
gonna be like, "Excuse me, what did you just call me?" Just like the viral TikTok where those high school students in the U.S. call professors by their first names, and they're just like freaking out, and so it's definitely something that I had to get used to. But once you get used to it, just like what Brooke said, it makes you feel like you're actually collaborating. You're actually listening. You're listening to them, and at the same time, they're listening to you. So as a student, especially during discussions, you don't feel you're more confident to participate in discussions because you feel like, yeah, it's like I'm talking to a colleague, I'm talking to a friend. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's really good.
Yeah. And also one thing that Brooke mentioned before about that you can take like retakes on exams and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important to point out here today for the audience, because everyone can fail an exam. I've done it. Have you guys done it? Yeah. And it can be very like stressful and it's
Mm-hmm.
never fun, but it's
Yeah.
not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
And if I could add to that, about exam retakes, I remember I asked my professor before about it, because I asked her, why do you give out retakes?
yeah.
And initially I thought it was a bad thing, because it might encourage students that, there's going to be a retake anyway. I'm just going to take the retake. I'm not going to study for this exam, or I'm not going to submit this paper. But it was really interesting, because my professor said that the reason they give out retakes is because they understand that there are a lot of things that students do outside of school. Some students may be working, some students may be, maybe having their own personal issues, or whatever it may be. So it's more of like them trying to understand that, yeah, you're doing something else outside of school, and if that's preventing you from um, you know focusing more on school, it's absolutely fine. There's always going to be that retake. So it's also, I mean, the retake itself shows a lot about Swedish academic culture. So that's really one of the cool things about
Yeah.
coming here. Very student friendly. I think that's the term. It's very student friendly.
And also to add here, it's also important to know that your ongoing studies after the failed like exam is still ongoing. So if you fail a lot of like exams, it can be that you're just piling them up. So it's always good to study before the exam to actually pass it. But as we said before, it's not like the end of the world, and you will have the chance to retake it several times actually. So Nosy, you said previously, or you have mentioned that your program it's very like practical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it mostly practical, or is it like, or academic? Is it like the, how do you say?
I'd say it's mostly practical, because the theory that we learn is just so we can be able to practically implement. We do
Yeah.
have like maybe courses that are like research based, in terms of us being able to to know how to do a thesis at the end of the day and how to present academic work and writing. But
Yeah.
generally, most of our courses, and we do have like a couple of math courses that we probably are not going to implement at the robotics lab, but just through math lab. But generally, the bigger chunk of the courses, like say maybe 75% or more, is mostly courses that you get a bit of theory just so you can be able to do the practical. So the
Yeah.
focus is more on the practical. Yeah.
And Brooke, what about you? I can imagine that your program is more on the academic side rather than practical. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that when Nosy was speaking. I think that it's more academic. I think that is something that I would really like, is to have more hands-on. Even I did an internship as well, so that is a little bit more practical, but it is definitely more academic. But that could also change with, you know, the course or the program getting more advanced as it grows. So that could be, you know, part of it. But it is more academic, yeah.
Well, and when the practical and academics are like examined, what kind of or what types of examinations do you have in your program? If you would like to go first, Jed, have you had? We spoke about like a written exam. Have you had anything else? No, I think your sound.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have this interesting story that I'd like to share that might be interesting for our viewers today, because in one of our because our course is also a healthy mix between theoretical and practical. So first we deal with leadership theories, organizational theories about sustainability, and then in the latter part of the program, it's more the practical application. And in one of our courses, the social entrepreneurship and innovation course, our school project was to come up with a sustainable business idea. So the objective of the course was we come up with a sustainable business idea, and then we pitched it at the end of the course. Now, the interesting thing that happened was this is actually an idea of one of the people from my group. We ended up pitching the idea for some funding for the Social Innovation Hub at Malmö University, and it got awarded some startup funding. So that school project that we did is actually going to be a real business that we're planning to launch in August.
Cool.
So that's like the coolest thing about, you know, this program is we came up with an idea, we pitched it, you know, our professor said, you know, it's such a good idea, why don't you like pursue it further? So we applied for this. It's called the Leapfrogs program. I don't know if you also have that in your universities. And we applied for the Social Innovation Hub startup accelerator program at Malmö University, and we got accepted. So yeah, so it's really cool. So for other people who also are looking for opportunities outside of after your studies, you have to be you have to keep your eyes wide open, because the opportunities might come even while you're still studying. You don't have to wait after your studies to look for opportunities to work or to start a business, because you know it's all about the connections you make, and yeah, you just got to keep your eyes wide open, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good to connect, like you said before, you
Yeah.
actually graduate, especially in Sweden. I've heard a lot of former international students saying that it's all about networking. It's all about networking in
Yeah, it
Sweden.
is.
And I think that's true.
Mhm.
And you can start networking at your university to start
Mhm.
off. Yeah. So Nosy, what about you and like how your courses are examined? I know you said previously that you had written exam as well, but how do you do when, let's say you have an exam in programming? How does that actually work?
So I think I've taken quite like so many different exams since I got here, because of the different courses. Like the academic courses, they have different examinations compared to the practical ones. So there are the take-home assignments, which you're given it like a probably a longer time, weeks sometimes, to do the course. Then sometimes you have like take-home exam, which is maybe like 24 hours to complete. So the portal opens at a specific time, and you have like maybe 24 hours to finish. So you can go home, do your research, and make sure that you're done with everything and upload on time. Sometimes it can be less time, maybe like 12 hours. And then sometimes you have like shorter exams, which are like 4 hours, which you can do either from home or from the school lab. And then I've also had a supervised exam where you have to do it at the school lab within a given point in time. And then the most popular ones for most of the courses is where you have a project that you're supposed to implement. So, like, for example, it can be using MATLAB, depending on the course. You can be tasked to perform a certain project and you use the MATLAB software, or you can use for robotics, we use ABB Robot Studio. So you're given a task and you're supposed to implement that using the software and be able to upload it on time. And then after that, you do a presentation on your work and you be like, asked to explain how you went about the solution, and that will determine your grade. Similar with all some of the other courses where I think we've used since I started probably like 5 different softwares, most of which are used in industry, because we've used like Robot Studio, MATLAB, Siemens Plant Simulation. I can't remember all of them, but yeah, we have we have used a lot of software, and so most of the software based ones, that's how they are graded. And then in some cases, you have to do it using the software. And then after the software, let's say for example, you implement it in Robot Studio, and then you have to go to the physical lab and be able to implement it practically. So that practical will also have a bearing on your final grade. And I think one of the most important things is when we do lab work, sometimes it's not individual work. Sometimes you can actually work as a group. Sometimes you can actually work in pairs. So that also brings in the aspect of collaboration. So it's also very important, because sometimes you can be like, you submit your project software based individually, and then when you have the final exam, you come together and decide, okay, which solution do you think is best? How can we best go about this so that we practically implement it? And then you collaborate just so you can have the best solution. So yeah, those are some of the many different exams that I've had since I started.
Yeah, and you addressed something here that's really or is a big part of the Swedish academic or higher education in Sweden and the academic culture. Speaking of like group assignments and group work, Brooke, do you have a lot of like group work in your program? And when it comes to being examined in the group work or group assignment, do you present in a group or do you send in a paper that you've done together, or how does it work?
Yeah, for group projects, we've mainly done like presentations. So we've never had to do like a collaborative paper, which I know that some courses do, and even like when it comes to the thesis, you can do a collaborative thesis as well. But ours is, like we've had to present on, like we have a topic and we have to come up with, or a theme, and then we have to come up with a topic and we have to present that. It's usually via PowerPoint, or we have a chapter of a book and we have to all read it and like look at certain themes. So that's mainly the group work that I've had to do. And it's because I get along with my classmates, it has been actually a really good experience to work together and to have different perspectives and to, just learn from each other. So I think that it has been really great to do group work in my program.
And speaking of like examinations, it can be very like a stressful time. Do you think, Jade, that because I saw a question in the live chat about part-time jobs, if you have the time to have a part-time job, and as I said to the audience before, that these people are our digital ambassadors, so that's kind of like a part-time job. And I know we've discussed this in a previous live stream as well, but do you think, Jed, that it's possible or feasible to have a part-time job where you need to like actually leave your home, go to the job, and then come home and just, what do you think?
Well, it is possible. Apart from this, the Study in Sweden Digital Ambassador Program, I also work as the resident assistant of the school, the student housing that I live in. But in my case, it's quite convenient because I live in the same place. So it's not like I have to go to a separate place to go to work. But I think I'm just speaking from my experience in our program because I have a couple of classmates who have part-time jobs where they have to either work remotely or actually go to the office. But For our program, it's quite convenient because most of our program, unfortunately, has been online. So if your program is online, then yes, having a part-time job, even if you have to go there physically, is doable. But it's a whole different story if you are having in-person classes,
Yeah.
because again, stress is subjective, but the programs, especially master's programs, they tend to kind of catch up sometimes, and it gets very stressful. So you just have to make sure that if you do take part-time jobs, that you're able to balance your time really well, because you have to always remember that your priority in coming here, especially if you're a scholar, if you get a scholarship, is the studies. You need to maintain a certain grade to keep the scholarship. But I also understand that financially, if you do need a part-time job, just make sure that your studies don't suffer. But yeah, it's definitely possible. There are a lot of options out there.
Yeah. And you said something really important here as well, that the studies are like a full-time job.
Yeah.
That's worth having in mind when deciding if you'd like to have a part-time job on the side of your studies.
And also to add to that, one common misconception is that when you have free time, it's free time. It's actually not free time. The free time that you have while you're doing your master's studies is supposed to be spent, reading course literature, doing self-studies, working on assignment. So if you have free time, it's technically not free time. So that's also one thing you
Yeah.
have to keep in mind. Yeah.
Do you mean like free time in your schedule or at your actual free time after school?
No, because for example, like in one of my courses, we meet used to meet like twice a week, so every Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you go to a lecture on Tuesday and Thursday, and then you think that Monday, Wednesday, Friday are free days. But the only free days in Sweden are weekends. No one here works on weekends. But if you have
And
a
we
free
love the
Monday,
weekends.
and we love the weekends, yeah. So yeah, I go to lectures on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but the Monday, Wednesday, Friday that we don't have lectures, those aren't free days. Those are meant to read course literature, work on assignments, meet with your group mates or whatever. So it's important to keep that in mind. But
Yeah.
weekends, no one works on weekends.
No,
So
exactly.
you
The
can have as
weekends we
much fun as you
party.
want.
No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to a segment I'm calling "What Do You Do?" So I will read a state or not. It's not a statement. I will give you a situation, and you will just answer what you would have done if you're in the situation. Okay, so Nosy, you're up first. If you're in class listening to a lecturer giving a presentation and there's something you do not understand, what do you do?
Oh, you ask, like you
Yeah.
raise your hand, you ask, yeah. And the thing about it is that usually when I have lectures, they're always like we need to be as interactive as possible, because I don't want to go through a whole lecture only to realize that you guys didn't understand what was going on. So they welcome the feedback a lot, and it's usually very interactive because people ask a lot of questions, especially in my program.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would ask, yeah.
Yeah. That's nice to hear because that's very important. If you do not understand, just ask, and
Yeah.
the lecturer will help you and your peers as well, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, Brooke, you're next. If you feel really overworked by uni to a level where it's not even bearable, what do you do? Or do you do anything?
I would recommend that you do something instead of, keeping it all in your head or, just having all of this stressful energy in your life. I think that there's some really great resources out there at these universities. Number one, within your program, there is usually a study counselor. If you don't know who that is, you can ask your program director, a professor, anyone that is within like a higher position at your program. I'm sure they'll be able to guide you. But the study counselor is able to talk with you on a variety of things, like not just which classes that you're going to take or your schedule or whatever, but how you're handling things as well. And another really great resource that even I've utilized is counseling at the university. A lot of the universities, and I think it might even be all, but I don't want to say. But I think that a lot of the universities have free counseling sessions, and I know at Linköping University, all you have to do is sign up online, kind of say what you're going through, and they'll schedule you an appointment. And it was a really wonderful experience and free of charge. And it really, you can have a number of sessions or you can have one session. It does not matter, just as long as you can talk to someone. And I highly recommend that because you don't want to keep everything bottled up. It's going to get worse. And these people are here to help. They're here to, that's their whole job. So I would recommend looking for those resources, either a study counselor or counseling at your university.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And did you wrote a blog post on?
Yeah. So I have a couple blog posts on mental health. It's a really big passion area of mine. So how to prioritize your mental health as a student, how to access psychiatric services like medication, even therapy sessions. So check out the blog for some mental health resources.
They really should. Yeah, exactly. Studyinsweden.se.
Studyinsweden.se. Yeah.
And also, one thing that's worth mentioning here is that in Sweden, you can influence your studies. Like Brooke said, just ask and let people know around you that it's unbearable. The workload is unbearable. And there should be a student representative in all classes, which is also someone you can get in contact with. And that student representative is always, if the university is making a decision about the education, the student representatives, they are supposed to be like involved in that decision. And you can find a lot of this information at your university's websites as well. But it is important because the workload should not be like unbearable and you should not drown in your uni studies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's totally normal to I think a lot of people might want to feel discouraged if they stop their studies midway, or it's like totally normal. We have plenty of students that have, just needed a break because life catches up with you. You can't predict what's going to happen. We're also living through a crazy pandemic, so things happen. So it's to say it's totally normal to ask for help and to prolong your studies if you need to.
Yeah, really good advice.
And also to add to that, you can simply just tell your professor, for example, if you have a deadline coming up or if you have an exam coming up and for some reason you're just really stressed or you can't handle it, you could just tell them. And most of the time, I think all the time, they will just talk to you and they will just tell you, all right, they're just going to give you either the re-exam or a different date or even like a different deadline. And it's just as simple as opening up. So one of the things that I've learned here in Sweden is that people are really willing to listen, especially your professors.
Exactly.
So just talk to them, don't bottle it up, talk to your friends, talk to your classmates, and you'll be surprised how much easier it actually is. Like it's not that hard to just get that support, because a lot of people will really support you.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, Jed. Here is the next, what would you do? If you're working on a group assignment and you feel that there's a better way of moving forward with the assignment, it might not be the traditional way, but do you share your opinion or do you sit tight and letting like the group move forward?
It depends on how I'm feeling that day. Because sometimes I've been in that situation more than a couple of times, wherein you think there's a better way of doing things, but the way you communicate that is not that this is right, you're wrong. It's more of like, oh, that's really interesting, I have this other perspective that you might want to look into, and then you decide from there. And I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but I think most of the most people in our class, I mean, all the people that I've interacted with in class have been very open. They've been very respectful of each other's ideas.
Yeah,
So, if there's something that doesn't feel right, you just say it. You just talk to them, and most of the time they're gonna listen to you. They may not agree with you. I mean, that's not the point, but it's important that you're able to communicate what you're thinking. And sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, wow, that's a completely different perspective," and we take that into account. But yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And it's always a good idea to speak your mind, um, even though the way you want to move forward is not necessarily the way you actually go forward,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Mhm.
just to keep an open discussion. I think that's
Yeah.
really important. And it's also how you learn by
Mhm.
hearing like different perspectives and everything.
Mhm. Just always be respectful. That's the most
Yeah,
important thing.
exactly.
Mhm.
But people, we've been speaking for almost 55 minutes.
Well,
Yeah, it's gone
Wow.
past so quickly.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say to the audience that even though you have more questions that we will not address here today, as we're running out of time, we have 3 upcoming virtual fairs that are free of charge. You can find a lot of information on our website about this, studyinsweden.se. Sign up, as I said, it's free of charge, and you will have the chance to chat with more than 20 Swedish universities and also us in the Study in Sweden team. So make sure to join if you have more questions about studying in Sweden. But let's move on to the end of this live stream by, is there anything you would like to say to the audience for prospective students that are interested in studying in Sweden? Do you have anything in mind, Nosy? Some
yeah,
final
sure.
advices?
Okay. For me, I would say the most important thing is to choose the program above the school,
Yes.
because you find that within the same school you have a lot of different programs, and the same program, the way it's done at a particular school may be different from how it's done in the next school. So in as much as you be like, okay, I want to do robotics, or I want to do something along the lines of robotics, I think the best decision you can make is to actually go on the school's profile, look up the program, look at the course content, the actual courses that you'll be doing, and make sure that when you choose it, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. And I feel like that's very important. I did it, and I feel like it works well. It worked very well for me, and I think that's a very good tip to consider when you're thinking about applying in Sweden. Choose the program. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Jed? Do you have any?
Well, no. Important advice I'm going to give is don't get too caught up with the universities and the university rankings, I would say, because you have to understand that, yes, the higher the ranking of the university, the more competitive it is. So the more difficult it is to go study there. So I would say keep your options open. Like what Nosy said, don't just look at the universities, look at the programs. Look at the programs that really fit your areas of interest. Because generally, I think it doesn't matter which university you go to in Sweden. I mean, the experience will always be different, and you will still experience the Swedish way of life, Swedish culture. You're still gonna be surrounded by amazing people, regardless of which university you go to, and you just have to give yourself the best chance possible of actually making it here. So don't put yourself, don't restrict yourself too much, and just keep your options open. And also, yeah, studying here is amazing. It's great. You're gonna learn a lot
Mhm.
about yourself. You're gonna learn a lot about culture. You're gonna learn a lot about sustainability. So
Mm,
if you do have a chance to come here, I highly suggest that you do.
yeah. What about you, Brooke?
Yeah, my advice is more of like an emotional. I'm like graduating soon and everything's coming to an end and I just feel emotional all the time. Won't cry, I promise. But I just think if you're on the fence, like you should do it. I think that really this has been the best 2 years of my life and I would love to relive it over and over again, even during the midst of a pandemic when everything was online and chaotic. It was really cool. I think I just learned so much about myself. This was my first time living abroad. I had to set up everything by myself. I didn't know anyone. It's scary, it's daunting, but I think that it will only, like, putting yourself out there and taking a risk like this will only bring good things. And I can't guarantee that everyone will have an amazing, perfect experience, but I think that it's just, Sweden is a really special place, really, really special, and I love it dearly. So I hope that you come here too.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. And to like end this live stream today, because I saw a question, a person asked, would you say that academic life and culture in Sweden suits everyone? And I find a quote on studyingsweden.se that I would like to read for you guys.
Mhm.
It said, if you want to challenge yourself academically, if you care about the environment, want to live in a world where everyone is treated equal, want to live in a modern country, then Sweden may be a good choice for you. And I think that says a lot about Sweden, higher education in Sweden, and the academic culture.
Yeah, and also remember I had this. I don't know if you can read it. It says
Yeah,
Sweden, a country
yeah.
less ordinary. I got this from the last Digital Ambassador meetup, so
Yeah.
definitely true.
Yeah. Okay, people. Thanks a lot for joining today, both the audience, but also you guys. Thank you very much for taking part in this live stream. I know it's highly appreciated by the audience.
Yeah, super fun.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you. And bye to the audience. Hej då, as we say in Sweden.
Hello.
Bye.